We actually just had an event, and we're in a hall that everybody cleared out of, and we're making sure we could meet our deadline with you. So
excellent. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of California Underground. We have with us here tonight a huge guest, State Senator Brian Dahle, running for governor of California, the entire state, not just, he's running for the biggest state, one of the biggest states in the entire country. Very excited to have him on. He is the Republican candidate running against Gavin Newsom in this race, one-on-one, no recall, no 30 people, no jokers coming out of the woodworks. He's the real deal. He's here. He's running against Gavin Newsom. Very lucky to have him on tonight. And we're going to have a full show asking him lots of questions about policy, thoughts on California. And Senator, welcome to the show. How are you tonight?
I'm great. Thanks, Phil, for having me on. Cynthia, good to see your smiling face. We are out on the campaign trail. So it's awesome with technology where we can just throw up an iPad and be able to talk to possibly thousands of people. It's awesome. I love it, and I'm glad we got the opportunity to connect.
Yeah, so are we, and that's how we like to do it. And Cynthia, my trusty co-host, welcome. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Senator, thank you so much for taking the time. I know, it was busy with the session and then, being on the campaign trail. It's really no joke. Full disclosure, I'm a state party delegate and I voted for you to get the endorsement for the state party. So yeah, and we actually, I work for Dan Holmes. So, met you, while you're on the campaign trail before the primary. So really great to see you again. We're very blessed to have you and we're excited to, for our audience to get to know you.
Well, thanks for your help at convention. It was obviously something that hasn't happened in a long time since Meg Whitman. And so it was a historic moment. Really helped me get through the primary. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So you've been in politics for a long time. And us down here in Southern California, I'm going to jump right into it. A lot of people who I know down here in Southern California said, who's Brian Dahle? So why don't we start there? I know there's a good story about a pickle jar and your grandfather. So why don't we just get out and let people know who you are, where you came from, and how you kind of got started in politics?
Well, so the Dahles came to California in the Great Depression. My grandfather actually came to California looking for a job, 1929. And he started out in LA, didn't find any work, ended up north. He had an uncle in Shasta County. He went to visit him and they said, hey, you're a veteran. He was a World War I veteran. They're giving out land grants in Siskiyou County. You should go up and see if you can get a piece of land. So he did go up there. He put his name in a pickle jar. They drew his name out, and our family received an 80-acre homestead in Tule Lake, California in 1929. He paid the taxes, built a one-room house, moved his wife then and two children into the home and we got the land. So we had that land so that was our start in California. We bought some land in Lassen County in 1942. And so we've been farming in California for 92 years. Franklin Roosevelt signed the deed to the property after we paid the taxes. I have a copy of that. It's pretty cool. But I got in politics. Let's talk about where Brian Dahle started out. So high school education, very involved in my community. I worked construction and did a lot of things when I was younger, but I ran for the Board of Supervisors in my county at the age of 29. Actually took office when I was 30, served 16 years on the Board of Supervisors. I left our county to run for the Assembly in 2011. And when I left my county, it was completely debt-free. Our pensions were funded. We owned everything. It was pretty neat. It's very rare that happens. Most counties have a lot of bond debt or pension debt. So anyway, running for this, people said, you should run for a higher office. I'm a farmer. I should say that. I farmed that whole time. I have a seed business. We raise cereal grains for seed, wheat, barley, oats, rye, peas. It's certified organic, and we sell to other farmers. My oldest son, Chase, is running our farm right now and our business for us, doing a great job. Very proud of him. I have a middle son, Reagan, who is living with us in Sacramento. They both went to Cal Poly San Luis. During COVID was really rough. Chase came back home. He still has about a half a year to finish. Reagan then moved to Sacramento. He's going to William Jessup. Took some time off. He's helping me on the campaign trail. We have a daughter, Rosalind, who is 12, who goes to school in Sacramento. And my wife, Megan, by the way, when I ran for the state Senate, she took my place in the Assembly. So served 16 years on the Board of Supervisors, 6.5 years in the State Assembly, 4 in the Senate. My wife took my place in the Assembly. So we're all in. We're not leaving California. That's why I'm running for governor. Been inside the Capitol for 10 years, working on trying to just bring some common sense to our legislature and keep businesses and people in California. That's our goal. We don't want to leave. We're not leaving, and we're in the fight, and that's why I'm running for governor. So that's
I want to touch on this real quick. And this is something that I talk about a lot with my listeners. You started local. You started your political career local. You see so many times people jump into the fray and they say, oh, I want to get into politics. I'm going to run for Congress. And they have no experience in politics. They've never done it before. They think the way to save California is I have to go to Washington, D.C. And I always say, no, don't go to Washington, D.C. I always say start local, city council, county supervisors, because if you have a good county supervisor board, that can make the whole difference from insulating yourself from the craziness of Sacramento. Talk to us a little bit about how important it is to get started in local politics and how important local politics are in California.
You're breaking up on me, but can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Yeah, so very important, I think. All politics are local. I think there was a president that actually coined that phrase. Can't remember which one, but at the local level, you deal with land use decisions. You learn how local government works. It's a 5-person board. The only thing you have to count to in the supervisors is a 3 to get something done. So I served 16 years and learned a lot about, how the state actually impacts the local level. And that's why I ran for the state and didn't run for Congress, because my problems aren't in Washington, D.C. for my business. They're right here in California. California is strangling my community, my neighbors, our business, Californians. And so that's why I went to the state legislature, was because most of my issues are at the local level or the state level. And I also felt that, a lot of Republicans in California can go beat the drum as a Republican, and I have a Republican district, but really don't dig in and aren't required to actually work real hard to get things done for your county. And I knew that as a county supervisor, very frustrated. So when I went to Sacramento, I took a little different approach than most legislators. I reached out to the Democrats. I sent an email to every one of them, asking them to come to my district. Remember, I live 4.5 hours past Sacramento North. It's a forgotten part of California. It's a beautiful part. 60% of the water for California comes from there. Our forests are burning. But most of the legislators had never been past Sacramento from Southern California. So over the 10 years, I've had 127 legislators to my district. The speaker, the pro tem. I invited Gavin Newsom when he was the lieutenant governor to come up to our farm and to my area to go fishing. I know he likes to fish. He never took me up on it, but many of them came, 127. Then likewise, I went to their districts as well and learned about their issues. And it's amazing to find out that we have a lot in common. So let me give you an example real quick. I went to Reggie Jones Sawyer's district. He represents USC, or he did at the time. Redistricting may have changed that some. He represented USC, space shuttles there. I toured the campus with him. I toured the space shuttle. Then we went to another part of his district, which is Florence and Normandy, where the Rodney King riots happened. And, saw a whole different side of what he's dealing with in his district. And when he came to my district, it's very rural, but we have poor people, just like he has. They're obviously different color, but they're poor. And so we realized that boys and men of color are faced with the same issues, no matter where you're in the state. In my district, young men, Native Americans, 18 to 25, the highest suicide rate in California is Native Americans, 18 to 25. In his district, they're young black men. So we work together on boys and men of color. We ask for appropriations to fund and get counseling for those groups. And we educated also their communities through the Boys and Men of Color Caucus. So there's one example of an opportunity where Los Angeles and Redding or Siskiyou County have something in common. And it's that way for homelessness. It's that way for housing. It's that way for energy costs. When you really break it down, it doesn't matter where you're in California. We are really faced with the same problems. We have a different approach. Now, Reggie and I don't see eye to eye on public safety at all. He believes we should let everybody out of jail. I don't believe that's a good way, but we set that in the parking lot and we work on the things that we agree on. And so I took that approach. I've done very well in educating members about our watersheds, our wildlife, our fires, our water system, drought, environment. As a farmer, I'm very concerned about the environment. I'm an environmentalist. I say I'm the original environmentalist. We take care of our land. And so I educate them, and I passed many pieces of legislation on the environment to actually focus on what's emitting carbon, like forest fire, and how to get more water out of our forest by actually cutting trees down, not all of them, but thinning out our forests. So those are a few examples of why local level learning to work with people is worked at the state level, and we need more of that. Quite frankly, in California and at the national level, we're so polarized from, each side's in their camps, and there's a whole lot of people in the middle that just want government to do what it's supposed to do, keep them safe, build infrastructure, have a good school, make sure that they can stay in business and stay in California. So that's the approach I've taken. It's paid off very well. I have a lot of friends across the aisle. Disagree, but it's not personal.
So I know you have a great voting record. You have like 10 years so people can take that opportunity to check where you stand on the issues. So you speak about, you actually do have great relationships and it's possible to work across the aisle. How many bills have you successfully gotten signed into law? Because if we get into it, it's very easy to introduce bills. I know there's that process where, the votes might come short. How successful have you been as far as legislating, getting things that you wanted done, like signed into law?
I don't know the number, but it's probably 25 or so, something like that, bills that have been passed. But more importantly, I worked on really big pieces of legislation that don't have my name on it, because I'm somebody who can manipulate or bring a point of view and change the language in a piece of legislation. So, for example, balance billing was a huge bill. That's people who go to the doctor and their anesthesiologist was not in their network, their healthcare network, and they were getting the bill. It was not right. It happened to people in my district, and the bill died. It was actually a Rob Bonta bill, our Attorney General's bill, and it died. And I supported the bill. Nobody lobbied me on it because they just thought that Republicans were against it. I actually liked the bill. And the next year we came back and we sat down bipartisan, 15 meetings with the doctors and the health plans, and actually hammered out a bill that both sides agreed on. It saved them money on attorneys, and we passed that law, helped our constituents not have to pay the bill, and eventually that law went to the national level, and they did it at the national level as well, saving hundreds of millions of dollars for ratepayers for their health care and for doctors, and the attorneys were the ones that lost. It was a great bill. So that's a bill that doesn't have my name on it. I was a co-author, but I actually brokered it because I brought Republicans to the table to get the job done. And I can tell you there's many times that I've done that on lots of pieces of legislation that don't have my name on it. And Ronald Reagan used to say that it doesn't matter who gets the credit. It's a matter of who wants to get in and do the work. That's who I am. I'm a policy guy. I like to do the work, and I don't need the credit. I just want to help my constituents.
You just said something that kind of rings true to me, which is, I wouldn't use the word manipulate. I think the way language is used in politics is incredibly important. And I always talk about how you can talk with people across the aisle, learn how to kind of speak their language, learn how to kind of connect with people. And that bill sounds like a perfect example of where it's the same core goal, but because it was worded differently, people got on board from both sides. And in California, I feel like there is this disconnect of polarization where one side is always throwing bombs at the other and saying, well, you're a socialist and I don't want to listen to you. You're a right-wing fascist. I don't want to listen to you. And then it's really, like you said, there's a lot of people in the middle. Once you start to talk to them and start to speak each other's language, that all of a sudden people go, hey, I like what this guy's saying. Like if someone were to listen to you and hear a lot of your policies, I've listened to your interviews, they would probably say, I like what this guy is saying. And I think maybe the Republican Party on a whole needs to get better at that. Maybe you can help them with that. But talk about how talking to people about these kitchen table politics and speaking their language helps you get across the aisle and get things done.
So the other thing you should know, Phil and Cynthia, is that you get judged on your vote, but there's 1,000 things moving to get one thing done, especially as a Republican in Sacramento. So if you really want to serve your people, sometimes you negotiate a really bad bill to be less bad because it's going to pass in a bad way. And if you negotiate, you can. So let me give you an example. So the Prop 1 water bond, which I was opposed to originally, and it was because I didn't feel that it had any money in it for storage. And so, but they needed votes. They didn't have the votes to get it on the ballot. And so I said, look, if you want to put money and dedicate that money to storage of water, I can vote for that. So I negotiated in good faith, and we put the language in, and I voted for that bill. And unfortunately, this is the crazy thing, my whole district voted against it, but overwhelmingly voted against the bill. But California as a whole, now remember, I come where there's a lot of the headwaters for California, 60% comes from my district. So people in my district are like, why would I want to pay for it? But California as a whole needs to store water. So the Delta needs water for fish, the farmers need water for farming, and the people need water for their homes. And so I negotiated that. I knew it was going to pass, and I was able to put in there for storage. So that's an example. Now I got beat up for it in my own district, but it was in my mind, it was the right thing to do. And I'm willing to take those votes and defend those votes because I think it's good for California. We need to do those things. And that's on a host of bills. A lot of times people call me a rhino or to call me whatever they want to call me, which is okay with me because I'm actually in there doing it. And it's not as easy as just, people go, you need to go do this, Brian. And it's become somewhat of a, so I say, I've been elected 26 years, 16 years in the Board of Supervisors, 10 years in the Assembly. And people go, Brian, you know what you need to do? And I go, oh gosh, finally somebody's going to tell me. I've been here 26 years and I have no idea what's going on. Will you please tell me what I need to do? Because I've just been lost. And, being actually sarcastic because they don't understand that there's so many moving pieces to get something done. And I'm doing the best I can. And I can defend every vote if you give me the time to tell you what was happening at the time of that vote. And if that happens, I will win them over. But typically there's a soundbite, there's a click on their phone, there's a like or dislike, and they see one thing and that's it. There's a whole lot of other things moving. And if you give me time, I can defend those votes. And people come to me and say, AB 7044 or whatever number. And I've been there 10 years. There's been 10 AB 744s, 10 AB 1s, 10 SB 1s. And so I can't remember the number of a bill. I can't remember my own, to be honest with you. I mean, I remember my first really significant bill was AB 744 because it was a monumental bill to help do forestry. And I got it done with some help from some Democrats who had been to my district and understood what I was talking about. So if you give me an opportunity, I can defend those votes and I can tell you what was happening at the time and my experience in what's happening. For example, broadband is very lacking in my communities. And I voted for a fee and everybody's freaked out because they say, it's a tax. Well, it is. A fee is a tax as well, but it goes to underserved areas that are paying that don't get those services. So I made those decisions. And because I know it will change the communities, the outlying communities in California, it'll change the inner city kids. And that's a vote that I'm willing to take and I will defend it because I know it's the right thing to do. So we can have an upward mobility for poor people. And that's what I'm about.
So let's jump into, sorry. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Oh, thank you. So you obviously have done so many great things behind the scenes and you don't get the credit that you deserve about it. One fun fact I think people should know this: before you got a promotion from your district to be a state senator, you were the assembly leader for the Republicans. How was your experience doing that?
Yeah, I was chosen by my colleagues to be the Republican leader. And my job was to get more Republicans in office. And in California, it's difficult. I will tell you, most Republicans don't understand. Our party is really, it's fractured. And what I mean by that, there's the Assembly's working for the Assembly members, the Senate is working for the Senate members, the congressional guys are working for the congressional guys. And we're in California, it's a blue state. So we've been losing, it's been tough. We have a very difficult time raising money. And some of that's our own fault. We've had candidates in safe Republican districts who don't do anything, don't take care of their constituents, and the people are frustrated. So my job was to go out and raise money and try to elect people to our caucus and build the Republican Party. And it's difficult in California. So there's been many of us that had that job. It's a tough job to do. Everybody's a targeted seat. Everybody wants money, and there's a limited amount of resources. And so I raised a lot of money for the Republican Party. I raised Frank Bigelow, Assemblymember Bigelow, and I were the top two fundraisers in our caucus. I raised $1.2 million, most of it from my district, from people I know that believed in me. And I used that money and gave it to other Republicans. Didn't spend it on myself because I had a safe district. So, for example, my wife is in a safe Republican district. She donated the maximum amount that she's supposed to donate to her party, to her caucus, to help bring more people in. It's a team sport, not always played by our team that way, but that's the way it is. And what really needs to happen in California is the Republicans need to unify. We need to build a donating machine that people do every year. It's part of your business plan to donate so we can push back, because the Democrats are organized. Their unions are organized. They have an endless supply of money. And remember, politics is about name identification. It's something I'm struggling with right now. Nobody in California knows who I am, as you mentioned earlier. It's because, why did Donald Trump win? Because everybody knew who Donald Trump was. Why did Donald Schwarzenegger win? Because everybody knew who the Terminator was. It's really a factor in winning races is name identification, and it takes money to do that. I can tell you the Democrats are very good at it. They know what the polls are, and they know what to say. I'll give you an example. Kevin McCarthy, who is Assembly member in Sacramento, who I'm in his district. So I see his flyers. My neighbors share them with me. There's a few Republicans I have in Sacramento, and his flyers say he stands up for public safety. It's a total lie. He votes against public safety all the time, but he put it on a flyer because he had the money to put it on a flyer, and people believe what they read. And if you have plenty of that to put out, you can get elected. And people go, oh, I'm for public safety. And so they'll vote for him. And it's not true. But the fact is, the Republican running against him has to expose that lie. And it takes money to expose that lie. And that's the situation Republicans are in California.
So I wanted to jump right into policies because, we want to be mindful of your time, and there's a lot to get to. So we're going to try and hit all the hot button stuff, right, as well as get to questions and comments from the chat. Let's first talk about water, because you come from an agricultural area. You know a lot about water. You had said something in another interview that floored me, and I'm not shocked because of the stat. I'm shocked that we allow this to happen, about how much water we actually had and how much we were just kind of throwing away. Can you talk about that?
Gavin Newsom came out just last week and said we've been in a 7-year drought. That's a total lie. Number one, the wettest year in the history of our state was 2018. Since we've been keeping records, 2018. Remember, the Oroville Dam spillway broke, right? I'm close to Oroville right now. I'm in Orland, actually. It's 10 miles from here. It broke. That was the wettest year in recorded history. Actually, Shasta, Oroville, and Folsom dams were 105% full. How can they be that way? Because there's a freeboard. The dam has some freeboard. They actually went above what they normally do to hold back water because the valley was flooding. They were 105% full. Here we are, 3.5 years later, and we don't have any water. It's because they let the water out. It's how we manage our water in California. California was designed, we have floods and droughts. It's nothing new, but they're letting the water out, and it goes into the ocean. Once it hits the salt water, we can't use it anymore. We need to hold it back. We need to use our reservoirs as a system and ability to be able to capture that water and use it for later dates. But we need more water in the system. Since it's been 35 years since we built any real infrastructure in California, and the population has doubled. So we need to build more water storage. The water's there. It just goes to the ocean. We need to capture it. Sites Reservoir is a great opportunity. Here in Northern California, it's 1.2 million acre feet. It was funded in Prop 1. Not one shovel of dirt's been moved to build the reservoir. It's off-stream storage. The other thing I want to talk about water is that there's a watershed above those dams, millions of acres, that we have stopped fire for the last 80 years. Fire naturally occurred in California every 10 years. The forest would burn. It would kill the little trees in the brush, and it left us with a beautiful forest with big trees, old growth trees, meadows. And now we have, in some cases, 1,000 trees per acre. It's because we stopped fire. There's nothing to thin them out. Now we have all these trees and all this fuel, and then lightning strikes, the trees are stressed, they die from drought because they're too overcrowded. It's like weeding your garden. We need to go out and thin the forest, allow those trees to stay alive after fire, which sequester carbon, mind you. Remember, what we breathe out, they breathe in. It's nothing new. But when the forest is hot, burns as hot and intense as it does, it devastates and sterilizes the ground. It takes 50 years for that forest to grow back. So we need to thin our forest. We can actually get more water out of the forest, and we can have a sequestering forest that actually sequesters carbon. One last point on the environment here. Gavin Newsom talks about climate change and tailpipe emissions. 41% of emissions come from tailpipes, so he's going to make you drive an electric car. That's not true. Forest fire is the biggest emitting of carbon in California, even though we produce 1% of the world's carbon. We don't count forest fires. I did a bill that said we need to count the carbon from forest fires that died in the first committee, because they don't want to count that, because that means we'd have to focus on the biggest emitter, which is forest fire, by thinning our forest. Unfortunately, that's sad, because Californians are thinking they're saving the environment by trying to drive up their electric rates, their gas rates, and put you in an electric car when the biggest emitter is forest fire, and we don't do anything about it. And every time there's a fire, they do more regulations on your car. It isn't going to make it any difference. So those are the differences between me as an environmentalist and most of the legislature as environmentalists.
I would say, and this is, you could tell me if this is realistic or not. I think we should have enough infrastructure to have a water savings account of like 5 years. So we should know like how much water on average California uses, and we should be able to have the infrastructure to say, okay, let's say 5 years, so that we can weather the droughts, the wet seasons. And I would think that's enough time that in 5 years, you're probably going to get a couple of wet years. You're probably going to get a couple dry years. But I don't see why that's impossible. I would think that's realistic for California to do something like that. Is there just not the willpower in Sacramento?
Mostly the system is already in place. We need to add reservoirs. Above the reservoirs we have, there's plenty of opportunities for that. There's offstream storage as well. There's groundwater we can store in the ground as well. But there's just a lack of really good policy and planning to do that. And, it's really hard to regulate people when there's an abundance of something. When we're in a constant crisis, you continually get regulated. When there's a constant crisis for electricity, when there's a constant crisis for fuel, when there's a constant crisis for wildfire, we're in a crisis, and that's easy to regulate you. If we fix problems, there's no crisis. We're in a constant crisis under this leadership, and that's the problem.
One thing people always talk about with California is they call it a fuel island, right? That we can't get gasoline, and we're just kind of out here on our own. And I think of that as in terms of gasoline and in energy together. But when I look at how much bountiful resources California has when it comes to oil or technology, we should be, in my opinion, we should be the hub of all energy and fuel on the western coast of the United States. We should be sending out so much energy that Oregon and Nevada and Arizona, Idaho, they're buying energy from us. That's what I think. But it seems like we live in this scarcity mindset where no, we can't have nuclear power because that's dangerous, or we have to live off wind power because that's the only thing, or solar power, something like that. We can't have oil because oil is evil. Do you support like an all of the above, which is what I think we need to do, like an all of the above sort of energy and fuel policy when it comes to California?
Yeah, well, number one, we use 1.8 million barrels of oil every single day. Every single day, California uses 1.8 million. We have 1,200 oil wells in California waiting to be permitted at the desk of Gavin Newsom. They did 10 wells last year. It's pathetic. We're importing 24% of our oil from Ecuador, destroying the rainforest, by the way. He says he's for the environment. It's called global warming. It means it's global. If you're ruining the rainforest, they're not sequestering carbon there. We're burning that oil here. Why don't we produce it in California, where we can do it more environmentally friendly with Californian jobs and a California tax base as well? Number two, they're focused on wind and solar, which are intermittent. They're not constant. There's a thing called geothermal. Most people don't even know about it. That's hot water in the ground. There's great places in Imperial County. There's places in San Francisco. There's places up north where I live that we can tap into that. You just basically pump the hot water out, make electricity, put the water back down. It reheats actually because the earth is warm, and it's a cycle. It works when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. Nobody talks about it. It's a great resource. We should tap into that. I will do that as governor. Make sure we tap into that. It's a clean energy source. The other thing we need for our grid is we need transportation lines, electricity lines, so we can move power from one place to the other. We overproduce in some spots and underproduce in other spots. We just simply need to build a line. Californians pay, which you probably aren't aware of, $1 billion a year in rates, electricity rates, to pay other states to take our energy when we overproduce. Remember, you put one electron in, one has to come out. There is no storage. He talks about battery storage. It's a joke. It's not real. We don't have the battery capacity. It'll take mountains of batteries to store the amount that we need to actually run our state. I mean, this state uses almost 50,000 megawatts every hour. And I'm telling you, there isn't enough battery storage to offset that for even an hour. And it would take years to get there. We need to build 10 power plants the same size as Diablo, the last nuclear power plant in California, which they just turned back on, by the way, to service 30 million electric cars. So Gavin Newsom's plan is really not environmentally friendly. We're destroying other countries to get the rare earth minerals that we need for batteries. We're destroying the rainforest in Ecuador. And we're really not changing global climate change. We're just making Californians think that they're getting something that is not helping the environment. We produce 1% of the emissions worldwide, but we're the 5th largest economy. So what have we done? We've exported all of our jobs to China, like where they make concrete. They ship it in here. They make it with coal-fired power plants with slave labor, and Californians are paying for that. And we're feeling good about the environment, but we're really not changing anything. That's wrong. Needs to change. We need those products that we use to be manufactured in California by Californians. It will drive up our tax base. It will give Californians good paying jobs and the resources we need. And at the same time, we will drive down our emissions for climate.
Is there anything you could do on day one regarding energy as becoming governor?
Yes. Make sure that CalGen permits those wells, do executive orders to move the transmission, put the transmission lines in place. Absolutely. There's a lot we can do. Mm-hmm.
So
the other
moving
thing
on,
we have special blends for California gas. That's why the fuel went up 80 cents in the last week. They need to do maintenance. We only use a certain type of oil or gas in California. It's a special blend. You can't get it from Nevada or Montana or anywhere else. We make it here. So we have a finite resource, and when they do maintenance, they have to shut down their plants, and that's why it's going up. And Gavin Newsom is talking about taxing them more. The biggest tax base on oil is California itself. $1.28 a gallon, I think it is, total in taxes is already taxed. And so the Californians are reaping the benefit, the California is, the state, of those taxes right now. And that's why you're paying $1 or $2 a gallon more.
Well, that was what was funny about what Newsom just recently did with his grandstanding about, it's because the oil companies are getting a windfall of profits and I want to tax them, but he doesn't want to call a special legislative session to actually impose the tax. But then while he's saying that, in the background, he's secretly going to the the refinery saying, by the way, can you switch to the winter blend as fast as possible? Because I know that our regulation on summer blend versus winter blend makes it more expensive. So he's already implicitly admitting that, yes, our regulations make gas more expensive, not your windfall profits or whatever he wants to blame on the big evil oil companies.
Just keep in mind, it's all about Gavin Newsom. It's not about you. It's about him running for president of the United States. He'll do whatever he has to do to keep the lights on because he's in a bad way. But at the end of the day, he's punishing Californians. You can't afford to live here. If you're on an hourly wage or you're a fixed income, you're getting pummeled by the cost of gasoline, the cost of electricity, the cost of a loaf of bread. We're in the trucking business. In the last 8 months, every single truck takes $200 a day more in diesel. The cost went up that much. So that's $1,000 a week. It's $4,000 a month. And we have to raise our price so we can compensate for the diesel. And that means every product that we haul goes up. So a loaf of bread, a gallon of milk, a 2x4, everything you need to live has got to go up. That's why you're seeing inflation go up. The fastest way to give people in California some relief is push down the cost of energy, and all those things that we have to make go cheaper, and then it cheapens up in your store. We try to do the gas tax holiday. 54 cents equates to $1,600 per family a year. We asked for that last year at this time. By the way, we had plenty of money in the budget, $101 billion to backfill the budget with that tax to fix our roads. And, they turned it down. Why is that? Because they want to give you a check here in the next couple of days for a couple $100 to buy your vote. That's what it's about. It's not about taking the pain away from people. It's about buying your vote, telling you they're helping you, and fooling the people once again.
My wife is actually in the trucking industry, and she has to deal with this all the time. And her higher ups give her credit for having to deal with all the zany and crazy California regulations because nobody else wants to do what she does.
Yes.
But she's constantly faced with California coming out and saying, okay, now trucks have to adhere to this standard. And then all of a sudden they go, okay, well, how do we get to that standard? What are the specifics? And the state of California goes, I don't know. You just got to be there in 10 years. So good luck. And that seems to be the thing is it's good. If it's feel good, it looks good to pass a law, but then they never fill in the details of how anybody's going to get there. And then businesses likely just throw up their hands and say, well, we're not going to invest in California anymore because it's not worth it. We'll take our money and go to Idaho or Texas or somewhere else.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm in the trucking business. It's frustrating that they make you change it without compensating you. It's a takings of private property, in my opinion. And, we've been fighting that. And that's what's driving up the cost for Californians. At the end of the day, it just continues to drive the cost. And that's across the board. It doesn't matter if it's in trucking or if you have a lawn mowing business. Now you have to get electric, weed blower that you're going to have to figure out how to charge while you're out working. It's just crazy.
So I wanted to leave some time for questions, but also we talked about, I want to play a little game with you. And you agreed. So I give you credit for being bold enough to play this game. I was looking at all the list of state agencies in California, and there's a lot. You can look this up. It's on the California government website. I'm not going to ask you every single one. I highlighted some for you, and I'll probably even pare that down for time's sake. The rules of the game are, I'm going to ask you the name of the state agency. You either can choose to reform it, abolish it, or leave it as is. And then we're going to do it like lightning round style. Give a quick 1 minute summary of why you think it should be based on your choice. Let's start off at the top. The Air Resources Board
Needs majorly reformed. I would appoint a new commissioner. I would bring back the power to the legislature. I think there is room for some that we could use. There's some laws that come out there that are good. For the most part, totally needs reformed.
The California Coastal Commission.
Out of control, doesn't allow development. We need to have some say in. They're another agency that has too much power. We need to reel that back in and give it to the legislature.
The Office of Digital Innovation.
Abolish it and start over. We have not done one thing to help streamline the DMV, the EDD. They talk about it. They don't do it. We need to get Silicon Valley folks in here and let them put a program together. We should have an app for all those things where we don't have to go and stand in line and then, by the way, get ripped off by $32 billion because Gavin Newsom didn't require employers to make sure people were actually unemployed. It's crazy.
Yeah, that always baffles me that in the state that brags about being Silicon Valley and the home of technology, our state government is still stuck in the 1990s. It's just trying to get anything done in the state government is really archaic. All right, California Department of Education.
Start over.
Start over? Just abolish it and start over.
I mean, at the end of the day, CTA is Gavin Newsom's biggest supporter. They own him. We need to empower parents, give parents the right to choose where their children go to school. The money should follow the kids, and that would be a great start. That's a battle that will be fought at the ballot box, I believe, someday soon. I think Californians are ready for it. 50,000 students didn't show up to LA Unified School District this year, 27,000 last year. That's a good indication that parents, they didn't leave. They're looking for something better. And the one thing that was awesome about COVID, the only thing was parents realized what a horrible education their children were getting, and they're pushing back. Thousands of, if not less than that, but a lot of people running for school board that have never ran for school board are getting involved in their kids' education. It's awesome. We need that. We need to empower parents and stop the legislature from teaching things like gender identity at the age, third grade, where we need to be teaching them reading, writing, and arithmetic. We need to teach them ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, and not the birds and the bees. And parents understand that. They're showing up. I think that's what's going to be a big factor in this race, quite frankly, is that parents have had enough, and they're looking for something different, and they're frustrated. And it's insane to think that our schools have gone so far to away from actually educating our children. You can do whatever you want when you're 20 years old. I don't have a problem with that. But don't be telling our children that, what gender they should think they should be, or confusing them at a young age. I think that's inappropriate, and most parents do, and you're going to see a backlash for that.
So everyone watching, get your questions ready. We got a couple more of these, so line up your questions for Senator Dahle, just so he's ready to go. The California Film Commission.
Well, actually, I don't think we need that, but we did do a film tax credit to keep filmmakers here in California, which I think is appropriate. But I think we should do that for every business. Give them a tax break so they can stay. I mean, it's a good indication that, one great lobbying idea, but we should do it across the board. But I don't think we need a commission.
The Department of Food and Agriculture. Yeah,
we definitely need that. It needs some reform, though. Obviously, I work in that area. It's I'm regulated by the California Department of Food and Ag, so that make sure that I'm selling seed that germinates, and that the supplier knows that it's pure. So I think there's definitely a place for that. There's areas that we could do some work in there as well too.
Health and Human Services Agency.
Yes, I agree. I think we need that. It needs some reform too. We need to be able to help people who have mental health issues more. We need more clinicians and less bureaucrats at the top. That's the problem with the homelessness, is that Gavin Newsom started bureaucracy from the top, and we actually need to fund counties and cities. They're the ones that do the work on the ground. If we give them the tools, they know better at the local level.
Okay, this should be an easy one. The high-speed rail authority.
Oh man, I hate that thing. I've railed on it. That's kind of a pun. Every year, they change administrators every 3 years. I've been there 10 years. We got 3 new administrators, and the last one's always the problem. It's a boondoggle. They've spent over $10 billion. It was supposed to be completed by 2020. We haven't laid 1 foot of track. They're talking about it being a single track, a diesel engine running it. It's not going to save the environment. It's a waste. I did a speech on the floor. I said, I'm a farmer. Sometimes you don't get a very good stand, and you need to just plow your crop down. We need to do that with the high-speed rail. No matter how much money you put in it, it's not going to give us a return. People aren't going to travel on it. And by the way, public transportation, people don't travel on it for one main reason: it's not safe. You can't get on public transit without getting accosted by somebody. That's why people don't use it. They're not going to use it if we don't make it safe, and that's what we need to do. Abolish it, build reservoirs, and give people their money back.
I think if this is just me, my opinion personally, I think Republicans in California should run on a platform that if enough legislators are elected and we get a governor, there should be a full-scale investigation into where the heck all that money went to. Like that, forget January 6th and whatever dog and pony show they want to show out, or whatever this committee on gas prices is that only met twice since June. This should be a real investigative committee, and our legislators should be going, where the heck did all those billions of dollars go? And follow the trail.
The biggest fraud of all time was the EDD, $32 billion. I believe it was a lot more than that. It was stolen from California businesses. We're going to have to pay that back. It's crazy. And Gavin Newsom single-handedly did that. He did not make the EDD. There's a part on the form. I know this because I'm an employer. When you lay somebody off, they fill out the form. They contact the business. Was this person laid off? You say yes, they get their benefits. During COVID, they just printed checks to whoever sent in an application, and they took that off of the form. That's on him. It's $32 billion plus dollars. Californians are going to have to pay that back. That is the biggest fraud in history. They should throw him out of office just for that. Businesses are going to suffer in California for probably decades to pay that huge amount back. And it also drove up inflation because it just dumped all that money into our system of people that didn't deserve the funds.
So my last question is before we like transition to the audiences, you spoke a lot about how there's lots of things we can improve within the Republican Party, and the truth is we do have a lot of demoralized Republicans. We had the lowest turnout for a primary, and so what's your message to those on how they can get involved with the party, how to reform it, make it better, and just how to get involved with the process with the civics and getting involved with politics?
So number one, Republicans are good at pointing out the faults of other Republicans. We're good at killing Republicans off. That's been a fact. So you know what it's like to go to war. Your enemy's out ahead of you. And while you're going to war, somebody's stabbing you that's supposed to be on your team. It happens a lot in the Republican Party. We need to get on the same page. We need, the word rhino, I'll take the worst Republican you ever can think of, the one you dislike the most, over any moderate Democrat. There's no such thing as a moderate Democrat. They get to the Capitol, they're squeezed by their party, and they fall in line. And then they tell them, hey, don't worry about it. We'll fund you to get elected. And it happens. So I want our party to unify. I want to stop bickering amongst ourselves. I want us to get out and vote. The biggest fraud, they talk about election fraud. The biggest fraud was 2.5 million people didn't vote in the recall, Republicans. Get out to vote. Go get your neighbors. And the ballot harvesting, they hate the word harvest. I'm a farmer. I love harvest. It's the best time of year. Let's go harvest those ballots. It's legal to do in California. Whether you think it's constitutional or not, doesn't matter. Today in California, get your neighbor's ballot, take it in, turn it into the clerk, and let's take back California. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think we could win. I know the system has some flaws. There's no doubt. But we have to show up and we have to vote. And this is the perfect year for it. Joe Biden is horrible, and they're not energized. In a midterm election, the party that's in control of the White House, which is the Democrats right now, typically always lose seats. This is our opportunity to turn out all we have and we can take back. They're not excited about anything. They have nothing to be excited about. It has the worst polling in the history of our nation as a president. And Gavin Newsom's running for that job. So right now is the time to unify as Republicans, get out to vote. There's one thing I can stress in this whole thing. Please take your ballot, go get your neighbor's ballot, and take it to the polling place and turn it in. Vote.
So I had one more agency, and it's probably going to be a real quick one. Department of Motor Vehicles.
Yeah. It needs a complete overhaul. We need to take the engine out, throw it away, and put a new one in.
Excellent. Yeah, no one wants to wait in 3 or 4 hour lines.
I will tell you this. When I become governor, I'm going to make it on an app so you don't have to go there and stand in line. I just went and did my real ID, and I had to go 3 times to get it right. And I'm a state legislature.
I like that idea. Never have to step foot in a DMV. All right, let's get to the question portion. Camille asks, if elected governor, what is the first executive orders you would implement or bill you would veto?
Well, there's a whole list of bills that we don't know which bills are going to come, but I could tell you that a lot of these bills that came in the last go around, I would have vetoed. The one about the oil well setback. We're going to lose 6,000 wells in California in the next couple of years. I would have vetoed that bill. I would have vetoed the gender identifying bill last year. Totally would have vetoed that. I mean, I would probably use my veto pen more than it's been used in a long time. But as far as executive orders, I really don't think it's the proper thing. I think there is when we're in emergencies, we should use executive powers. I would do that for transmission. We are in an electricity problem, and I would do that for transmission lines for sure. And I would do that to fast track the ability to put on new generation in California so we can drive down the cost of electricity and fuel.
All right. Another question. Can you work with pro-freedom legislators to decriminalize the exercise of Second Amendment in California? So question always comes up for Republicans, I guess. Work with it because California has so many regulations regarding the Second Amendment. Would you work to kind of get rid of that stuff?
So look, number one, I voted. I have a really great voting record when it comes to the Second Amendment. I don't want to penalize law-abiding citizens anymore. They have plenty of regulations. I'm a firearm owner myself, of many of them, and I don't vote for that. I want to get firearms out of criminals' hands. We have felons running around we know have firearms that shouldn't have them. That's the first thing I would do as governor, is make sure we fund local agencies, local sheriffs, to go out and get those guns out of the hands of felons that we know are out there. They're the ones causing the crime, not law-abiding citizens.
Let's see. What is the most pressing issue facing California today? That's a big question. First day in office, what is your focus?
Drive down the cost of inflation. The biggest thing people are faced with today is putting food on the table, surviving in California. And we do that through the policies I talked about in energy. Number one, out of the gate. Number two, crime. I would appoint a parole board. I would fire the parole board that Gavin Newsom has in place. I would appoint a parole board that will make people serve their sentences and not be let out early. And we have to have actually tough on crime policies. You cannot have a society where you have lawlessness, and that's exactly what we have. There's no punishment for crime. I will work every day to put criminals back in jail.
This one I think is right up your alley. How will you rebuild our California agriculture to make it robust again? Excuse me. How will you help with water and our suffocating electrical grid?
Number one, build more storage for water. The grid, again, I talked about transmission and getting on sources that aren't intermittent, like wind and solar, or something that like geothermal that works in the time when the wind's not blowing, the sun's not, and it's clean.
Let's see. Anthony Cabasa, who you know very well, is watching. He said, "What's your favorite football team and favorite baseball team, and what's your favorite hobby?"
Actually, I really don't have I was a Seattle Seahawks fan only because my brother was a Raiders fan, and they used to beat the Raiders way back in the day on Monday Night Football. They stunk for years, so that's just a rivalry between me and my brother. He's a big Raiders fan. I don't really have a favorite team. I played football when I was in high school, and I played baseball and played sports. My son's a wrestler, but so I don't have a team. Baseball. Been a Giants fan because I'm from Northern California, but I've been to as many Dodger games as I have Giants games, and so I like to watch them both. And I love the rivalry between the two cities. It's awesome. My favorite pastime is really just spending time with my family. I'm a farmer, and I've been elected for all these years, and I'm away a lot, and so I love to just get this barbecue. I have a Traeger. I love to smoke meat and cook for my family. We always get the cornhole out, have a little tournament, get our neighbors over. That's my downtime, is just spend time with my community and my family.
What's your go-to meat? Because I'm a fellow smoker as well. What's your go-to meat that you have family coming over, you want to impress them all? What's your go-to meat? Is it pulled pork? Is it a brisket? A tri-tip? What is it?
I got to tell you, I make a mean tri-tip, but I'm getting good at the brisket, and I'm really starting to perfect that. And I'm pretty good at making turkeys. I love to smoke them, completely smoke them. So put it on super smoke and smoke it till it's done, and then let it rest for a day. Actually throw it in the fridge, let that smoke soak in, and then peel it out, make sandwiches, and just eat it. Oh, it's the best.
I'll have to try that. Yeah, I tried brisket once, and I don't think I cooked it to the right temperature. It wasn't quite fall off the bone, or it wasn't quite pull apart yet, but I'm gonna try it again.
Marinate it for a while in the fridge. Throw a can of 7-Up in your marinade. Just try it. I know it sounds crazy. Throw a can of 7-Up in there and let that roll around, or Coke. It breaks it down a little bit. Put either marinated and then smoke that baby, and you'll love it.
Oh, I'm gonna try that now. How will you lessen homelessness? Would you be open to work with someone like Schellenberger, Michael Schellenberger, who ran for governor as well?
Yeah, I met with him. I've talked with him. Homelessness is a complicated issue. As you know, I've talked about drug addiction. That's number one. Number two, all the things I talked about. The other thing I want to do is partner with faith-based communities. They have done a great job of actually getting people off of drugs and on a pathway forward. Unfortunately, our government does not partner with faith-based communities with money. It's unfortunate because they actually have way better results, and there's many examples throughout our state of faith-based community folks that actually help people in a more productive way with a lot less funds than we do at the state level. So I want to partner with them, and we might have to run that through the legislature to get it done, but that's something I will champion.
So we want to be mindful of your time. You got a lot to do. You got a lot of traveling to do. Thank you for coming on. Obviously, open invitation if you want to come back on, and we can continue because there's so many topics to get to. Why don't you tell everybody where they can learn more about you? If people want to get involved in the campaign, there were a couple questions about people wanting to volunteer and help out with the campaign. Why don't you let people and the viewers know all about
So
that?
we're on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. We have a website, briandahle.com. You can learn, we have docu-series. You can see me on the farm. We have some videos. We have a lot of stuff on there. We have Campaign Sidekick if you want to make calls and you want to get out the vote. We have a team that does that as well. So go to our website. That's a place to start. We have people that do that for us. And just get out. Mainly, I want you to donate. If you can donate $10-20, it makes it, if 1,000 people give you $10, that's $10,000, and that's real money, and it makes a big difference. We're focusing on Latino community. There are a lot of Latinos coming out to us, and people are doing their own videos in Spanish. It's awesome. We're getting a lot of traction there. We're excited about that. But yeah, go to my website, get out the vote. I just beg and plead with you to go out and vote, get your neighbors to vote, donate if you can, and just tell somebody, do your part. I'm doing mine. We're in a position to take back this state. I know it's a long shot, but so was it for David when he beat Goliath. At the end of the day, you got to go to work. He put some rocks in a sling, and that's what made the difference. So I thank you for having me on. It's been awesome. It's good to see you, Cynthia, again. Look forward to meet you in person, Phil.
Yeah, hopefully soon. Well, with that, Senator, thank you for coming on. Best of luck in your travels and in your campaign. As always, if you want to come back on, we're more than happy to have you on. And have a great night, everybody. As always, if you like this podcast, I always end it with one way: share it, text it with somebody, especially this one. This is one podcast you should definitely text to as many people as possible. Be like, have you heard of this Brian Dahle guy? He's got solutions. Check him out. Listen to this podcast. And make sure you like, share, subscribe, review, all that stuff. So with that, have a good night, everybody. Later.
God bless. Thank you.